welcome to another episode of the Super Bold podcast. I'm Fred Joyal, and I go into the lives of really interesting and bold people and look at how they got where they did and what decisions they made, choices they made, and also maybe sometimes where they didn't step up and they missed out on something and they stacked a regret in their life, but they found a way to overcome it. And my guest today has had an amazing career, and some of the stuff we're going to get into later that's kind of exciting because it deals with sort of the world of human intelligence working for the government. But now Don Weber, my guest, is, he's a leadership coach for Fortune 500 companies, and also. But what really makes him unique is he's a student of human behavior, and I think that differentiates him in a way that makes him probably much more successful. But we're going to dig into maybe some interesting twists and turns in his life. Don, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it.
So, how did you get started coaching CEOs and people like that? What led to that?
Well, it was an accident, straight up. There wasn't so much talent. It really was an accident. When I got out of my work, government work, around 2010, second year into Obama's administration, and we could talk about that because there was a lot of interesting things that happened during that period. We had also the financial crisis of 2009, you remember? We had a big meltdown 2008, 2009, the Bernstein thing and Lehman Brothers and all that. So the economy was really, really soft during that period. So I took some years off, kind of a sabbatical. I stopped working for the government and just chilled out. And in 2014, somebody had asked me if I would teach it was an urgent matter. It was for the Ministry of Agriculture, a contact I had. And they asked me if I would teach a public speaking class for the Ministry of Agriculture because he needed somebody to teach it in English. And that came to mind, and I spoke English, and I had the qualifications to do it. So, okay, fine. So I taught the class. Turned out there was somebody there from IBM. I guess Human Resources was in the building. I don't think they were in my class, but I think they were in the facility. And they saw me, and I got hired to start training at IBM. And what happened at IBM is I was quickly introduced to the CEO. Well, the title wasn't CEO. They used general manager for somebody who manages 65,000 people. I find that really good, though. It's humble because you have all these people running around. I'm CEO of what? You have a board of directors? No. How many people do you manage? 3. Oh, you're CEO. Oh, cool. Nice.
And president and treasurer.
You have a lot of that. Here she calls herself general manager, 65,000 people. She's head of Europe, Africa, and Middle East. I mean, it's quite an important position in IBM. So because of my relationship I developed with her, she opened a lot of doors for me, directly or indirectly. That's really how the thing came about. It was funny because when I started working at IBM, I was working in high security areas of IBM, which is very interesting considering what my background had been. That I was allowed into these particular buildings and facilities and stuff like that to do training. And I suppose that somebody I'd worked with in the past kind of helped facilitate that because it just was kind of weird that these opportunities opened up automatically by themselves and just kind of appeared. I mean, literally, I got a phone call from IBM and saying, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you. We've got this opportunity. Would you be interested?" Da 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 da, kind of thing. So that's how I got into training. When I started training, though, the first time, I found I really enjoyed it. I'd done a lot of things. I've been a successful diamond broker in Antwerp while I worked for the government. Was very successful at that business. Made serious amounts of cash. Not to brag, but it was a good business. So that had gone well. I had an IT company that I was CEO of. I never called myself CEO, but it was a small startup that flopped, and I lost some serious cash on that, some serious dough on that.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything works, yeah. And then I went into training, becoming a trainer. And then the thing with IBM that led to a lot of many worked for Siemens, Iberdrola, Capgemini, Amadeus, TV channels, politicians, high court justices, prime minister's offices, all kinds of interesting.
Wow. I mean, that's So you basically do you say yes to everything, or is that comes your way like this, or and are these are all just coming at you? Do you have any process of going to find the right opportunity, or are these things just that your reputation is such that these things are lining up for you?
I think most people, what they miss, you have a lot of people on the digital marketing camp, and it works on referral. When you're working at the high levels, they aren't going to LinkedIn to go look for you, right? It's coming because somebody has said something exclusively. I know a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, you can do this." It's not. It's not that way. It's a small community. Everybody kind of knows each other. If you mess up in that community, you're done. That's for
Mm-hmm.
sure, and you probably don't get a
Yeah.
second chance. Um, so it's a different kind of market. Do I take everything that comes my way? Generally, I'm going to say if it's high level, yes. Even if it doesn't pay very well, because I don't do it for the money. I do it because I learn. Sometimes I learn more than I teach, truthfully. Sometimes not. But it's the opportunity to learn, to be around people, be around centers of influence, that kind of thing.
Have you met people uh, over the years that you were uh, amazed at their level of boldness as they move through the world?
Well, can you be a little bit more concrete on that question? Which I have, but when I answer
Yeah.
it,
Let's. I think I would probably want to talk about business people first, and then probably political leaders at some point as well. Um, but you've met some really successful business people, or I'll put it a different way. What have you found that seems different about them? Because part of it is you study human behavior, right? And one of the things we talked about is more and more you think it's maybe I'm going to say you think it's less social rather than almost genetic in how people are different, or am I in the weeds on this thinking?
maybe
What's your assessment of what makes somebody like a general manager of 65,000 people?
right. I don't know. It's genetic. I never really thought about that. I mean, I was talking about biochemical reactions to our way because of our behavior and actions. I think it's a lot of it praise environment. Mm, Most of it's praise environment. So you have people who are really driven. I mean, here's a little secret for you. Most people who are like workaholics and success driven, hardcore, they're running from something. Pretty standard actually. They've
Wow,
got
that's
something in their background that they're running away from. That's why they work so hard.
so. I need to drill down on that. I need to know. I need to know what I'm running from, maybe. But but can you give me an example of an anonymous example of somebody? What specifically were they running from?
It could be maybe when they were a child, they had some trauma, some issues with maybe one of their parents or both, something about their childhood that they don't want to deal with. So the way to divert their attention, their emotions, or their anger, even, they divert it into this could be sports, could be being a great success in business. So they have all this extra energy, but what really it is they're just diverting their attention, pain, whatever, away from that to this. I'm not saying everyone, all right, not
Hmm.
everyone, but it's a much larger percentage of people realize.
Now, do you think that that's healthy for them? That it's because of it they're successful because of it's like a this is the motivation to become really successful. Now, maybe that success is hollow or uh, doesn't fill the emotional hole no matter what. But maybe they accomplish amazing things that they wouldn't have. I mean, I would imagine that Steve Jobs is a perfect example of a man whose his success was beyond extraordinary, and but it was a really crappy father, for example. And so, uh, what do you think he might be? For example, what would he be running from? Even if it's not, if we don't know and you don't know, what would be something that would drive somebody to be like that?
Well, let's say Steve Jobs, crappy father. If he had empathy, and I don't know if he did, And if he had had someone in touch with some of his emotions, he probably at some point of his life towards the end probably regretted it. Likelihood, not for sure. I don't know
Yeah.
the man. What was driving him? I don't know what he was running from or what was driving him. Again, we're not saying that every person who's driven and successful or an elite athlete is running from something, but very often it's something that they want to fill a hole. And the problem, and this is where I got this idea from, or where I've experienced this, when I've run into top general managers, top CEOs of huge corporations. We're talking multi-billion dollar, 80 billion, $100 billion corporations, the big ones, right? And they retire. And a lot of these people I've stayed in touch with for years afterwards, they tend to go through some pretty hard adjustments because they're
Yeah.
no longer numero uno. They're no longer so important. They're no longer who they were. And they come to realize, well, they have to start facing themselves a little bit more. I've seen some people turn to drinking. I saw one guy, he really deteriorated in 12 months. It was amazing. Really amazing. Super executives, presidents, like, wow, to like look like an old man that was all crunched over and very sad. A very nice guy. Of course, his wife passed away too, also, and whatever. But so he had a few other things. But I think a lot of times, people who are driven, they should ask themselves, especially if you're like a workaholic type, what why am I doing this? And it's much better to do something, become successful in something, or become great at a sport or great at something, than sit there and wallow in your victimhood and say, "Oh, poor me, I'm a victim." Oh, which is nowadays seems to be like in fashion, right? I
Yes.
think it's much healthier to go out and go do something about it, whatever. But there seems to be an underlying common thread there that some
Yeah,
people.
and does it have a lack of introspection about uh because it obviously, when you have massive success, that feeds you something. There's, showing up every day as Prince of the City, it feels pretty good on that level. Um and
Called
is it
ego, right?
is
Go
uh
ahead.
yeah, very possibly that could be a factor.
And it's probably one of the ugliest things that we have as human beings is too much, not self-esteem. Self-esteem is healthy, right? Self-respect, or good. But when you have this ego that you're better than everybody else, and you have this pride, really hinders you. It really ties your hands. It's actually a handicap, more than a help. It's a good thing to have self-esteem and have empathy and having a balance. But when it's too much, it's all about I, me. Yeah, it's and you run into that. Some people are better at hiding it. Some people, that's there, but they hide it. That's another interesting one. It's a more complex stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody who's deep down is an egomaniac but doesn't seem that way. I mean,
Politicians.
that's yeah.
Not all, but many. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, not all, but certainly, I mean, it takes a certain amount of uh, egomaniacal tendencies to run for office, I think, of any level. I mean, if you want to be in the town council in your little town, it's because you care about stuff in the town. You're not.
Right.
It's not a big power move for you. Um, but yeah, I think that you have to have like an extra, just to say it, like, I think I could be a senator, I think I could be president, I could, and because the reality is the entryway is pretty simple. You just say you're going to do it, and you get some signatures or whatever and do it. But to actually believe that that you belong at that level, that's a big jump. um
Well, I think some people, they believe they actually can do that. In fact, I've met some, and they think they can really help and do good things. But once they get into the machinery, it's not. They're not really free to do what they want to do. I can get, and I know people. I'm firsthand. There's one gentleman. I got to be careful here,
huh?
but they, they
Hmm.
um, got into one of the European member of the European Parliament at a very young age. Not legal to drink, we'll put it that way, in the
Wow.
US, but this is in Europe. Now, you're going to tell me, how did they become a member of the European Parliament at that very young age? They are just geniuses, and they were really good at charisma and just really knew how to organize things? No way. And I know this person well enough that I also know when they stop running for office about 20 years later and what they told me. And they said, the only thing I know is politics. And I have a lot of my colleagues, I'm paraphrasing here, but I have a lot of my
Mhm.
colleagues that's all they know to do. They've never worked, never had a job, never cleaned a toilet, never worked in a McDonald's or never worked in whatever. You know what I'm saying? So what do they know
Yeah.
about real people's problems? Nada.
Yeah.
And that goes for both sides.
Interesting.
That's not left or right or any of that kind of thing. It's a fact.
No, no. There's a career politicians that's we have more of those than we don't. Uh, you know, but that is interesting to have started so young and made it so far. Does they reflect on that and say, uh, what's next? I mean, is that the biggest struggle? Is what do I do now?
For this particular individual, exactly, because they didn't run again because they knew they wouldn't win. And I was with them actually especially that last week when they were a member and no longer a member. And that week is when the new elections were and whatever. And exactly, yeah, that we had a lot of discussions about what the next steps would be for that person in the future. And I mean, one way it was kind of sad. It was kind of sad because I don't think he's not an evil person, but I came to realize that was really where it came to open my eyes. These people are just they're put in there by other people. They're saying, "Oh yeah, you'll do. Hey, would you like to be senator? I can help you, Fred. What do you think, Senator Fred Joyal? Sounds good, right? Senator of Rhode Island. Oh, anyway,
Well,
it's a
it's interesting that you say that because it reminds me that at one point now, when I was running 1-800 Dentist, I was in the television commercials as the spokesperson, and so I was on the air constantly, and in the TV commercials for 15 years, and our biggest market was California, and we were nationwide, but we probably a third of the money we spent was in California. Uh, and so somebody approached me and they said, "Have you ever thought about being governor?" And of course I said, "No, I hadn't really thought about that." And he said, "Maybe you should, because you have the recognition factor already." And I thought,
you know.
and I thought that was really interesting. And all his interest was being the man behind he was like a recruiter for that, because he apparently he had guys looking for somebody that they could put in place as the front man, so to speak, um, for whatever their goals were, that they were never going to run for office. That's what I'm assuming. But I was just surprised at being approached like that, and just you're and I like, yeah, that's not my thing, I guess. And in large part because I was a CEO of my own company, and if I wanted to get something done, I got something done. We would get together and I'd say, I really think we should do this, and we would debate about it, and if, in the end they either talked me out of it or we all went and executed it. And so I pretty much believe that politics would drive me crazy, uh, the my to be ineffectual on things that matter to me.
You do actually. Not that you mentioned it. Yeah, you have the right poster cut out. I'm not joking. I have
Mm,
a friend of mine. He's a retired Army. Similar kind of situation. They asked him if they could sort him out to be senator if he was interested. I mean, and these are real powers. And but the problem was that he'd have to do what he was told to do, basically.
yeah, yeah, they had expectations, because and obviously the other thing now is I would not even consider it now, just because of the amount of money it requires, that and that you owe people favors for that kind of money, uh, big favors, and I don't think I like that kind of indebtedness. Um, I like indebtedness where I can invest the money and make a business grow. I want a loan from a bank. You know, I
Yeah.
want I want to use their money for that. I want venture capital money. I want that kind of money. But uh, So, uh, how do you, or what do you say to somebody like this person? How do you help them with your expertise and your experience? What's your uh, bag of tricks, let's say, that
I don't
you?
know, have a bag of tricks. You're talking about this particular politician?
Yeah, this particular politician, I think, is a great example of somebody who is now open to a how to deal with a major transition in their life, and they've come to you, so they're coachable, presumably at that point.
Well, there was a lot of drinking going on, I'll tell you that, because the person was not too happy. What kind of was decided or discussed was they go back to school and maybe teach at university and maybe run for like a small local political position. So it wouldn't be completely out of politics, but something that wouldn't take up too much time, like a small mayoral position or, this kind of thing of a small town, something that wouldn't eat up a lot of time, and at the same time still be able to go back to school, maybe do some teaching on the side, um, and then wait for the next opportunity. These politicians, I mean, they're cyclical. Is another friend of mine, I guess, who had been minister of another European country, a minister of transportation, agriculture. He just sent me a message, poor guy, and he had a nervous breakdown over the election. They lost.
Wow.
Wow. It's pretty high stress stuff. Now, this guy in particular, he's pretty ideological, and I don't think he's easy to manipulate. He's hard headed. What he believes, and I don't. But I think he probably was pretty hard on himself with the loss of the election. So you have different kinds of people, that get involved in these kinds of jobs. You have other people who will never take a position. They're slick. No matter you ask them, and they're just always they're like a snake. They're always trying to slip out of avoiding any answer, give you any information. That's actually more common, I
Yeah,
find, than these other
they're
people have
more
been open
ciphers
about.
than actual ideologues of any kind. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
So, and I guess different strokes for different folks.
um, so you've had some interesting experience in the the human intelligence side, humint as they like to call it in government. Uh, Give us some of the interesting stuff. So I'm sure the getting in the diamond trading business was either directly or indirectly connected to some of that you were doing. Uh,
Very
so
astute.
um, and uh, and I know that you were recruited by a president. So I'd love to talk about that, the timing of that, and that experience, because
What
these
it
are
wasn't that cool. I wasn't recruited by the president. No.
no, it
Let's
wasn't a
clarify this.
direct phone call.
No,
No,
no, no, no, no. Not even close. Not even close. The way it worked, it was a foreign national who worked in intelligence. He was a friend of mine. I didn't know he worked in foreign intelligence. I had no idea. He just traveled a lot and went to a lot of weird places, like in the Ivory Coast in Africa, and involved with like really strange, exciting, sounded a bit exciting stuff. And he's the one that kind of probed me over a period of time that why don't you go study diamond grading and diamond cutting and emeralds and stuff up in Antwerp? This is back in the 90s, late 90s. So I
Mm.
finally took him up on it, and I went up there and started studying stones and grading and all that. After I had all my studies, certificates, and everything, and I actually started working in the diamond trade a little bit. And that involved, for me, that involved like flying to Brazil and buying rough diamonds, or flying to different countries in Africa and buying rough diamonds. And those are rough areas, by the way. They're not just the stones are rough, the environment is rough, right? People will rip you off, shoot you. And I know people that have been shot and almost killed over trying to steal their money or steal their diamonds from buying. It's not all bank transfers and clean, especially back then. So,
Yeah.
long story short, he kind of pushed me in that direction. Next thing I know, he goes, "Hey, I've got a friend of mine down in southern Spain that would like to. Would you like?" No, I'm sorry. He worded something like this. He goes, "I'm going to be having lunch in southern Spain with the Consulate General of France. Would you like to come?" I said, "Sure, cool. Wouldn't you want to go, Fred?"
I'm one of those people that I have become the person who says, Yeah, I'll do that. Sure. um, and so, give me, what age were you when this was happening? Don?
Hold on, I gotta think now. 30. I've probably been about 32, more or less, give or take a year, something like that. So yeah, I went to the lunch. We traveled down there. We went to the lunch. I was already living in Europe at the time, of course. And through the course of the lunch, he said, "I've got a friend of mine at the U.S. Embassy that would might like to speak with you. Would you be interested in having a conversation with him?" This is before DHS existed and all that. He works at Treasury, U.S. Department of Treasury. Cool, sure.
Now, DHS, for those listening who can't keep up with the government acronyms, is Department of Homeland Security.
Right, and it didn't exist back then. Back then, the structure of the government was different. It's before.
Yes, before 2001. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Or actually, 2001, I think it already had just happened. We were right around that period. So anyway, I get in contact with the people, and he puts you in contact with the people in Paris. Then there's a series of like weird little tests that they asked me to do different little things. By that point, I realized kind of what I was getting into, but tasks might be simple. Like there's this bar over here on the corner. We're really interested because they sell drugs. By the way, I never got involved in law enforcement type things, but this was one of the tests. And we'd like you to go in there and try to get us as much information as possible. So, in about 2 weeks later, I came back with our full phone list. Anyway, they were, I guess, impressed. They were like, "Okay, right, cool." And there were a few other things, and then they had me fly to South America to go meet somebody at another embassy we had. That was really interesting too. I was in a relatively dangerous country, and they had these black Suburbans kept driving around the block. I was supposed to meet them at an ice cream shop, and for like 45 minutes, these black Suburbans kept driving around, different ones. And I figured it was the embassy cars, but I didn't. It was kind of like, "When are you
You
guys
can't
coming
tell
in?
because the
What's going on
windows
here?"
are
Right?
tinted, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
And then I had my first initial meeting, and then things started. And it was small. It started small, 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 and bigger and bigger, bigger things.
now I'm very interested. Hang on, this I'm reaching to close that door because my refrigerator is making a weird sound. And uh, so how? Okay, well, let's see. We got to go a little bit more into how do you get all those phone numbers from a bunch of drug dealers?
They were Eastern European organized crime, and what I did was kind of shitty, but anyway, I did it anyway. I went after one of the bartendresses, female. She became my boyfriend, my girlfriend, not my boyfriend, no, my girlfriend. And anyway, and through her, I was able to go to parties and was able to get access. And people might get drunk and pass out and leave their phone there. And I had a little thing to copy the SIM cards. Which
Okay,
wasn't
so they
provided.
weren't
Wasn't provided to
necessarily
me. Hmm?
they weren't offering up their phone number so much as you were
God,
electronically grabbing it, or you know
I mean, I'm sure they
this
would
was
have
back
freaked out.
before you could hold the phone up to their drunken
Right.
face and get the phone to open. You had to know how to get in the phone, or you had that little device that would suck the phone number out.
When
Yeah.
back in the old days, he said like, was it GSM1 or whatever? He'd open the back, take out the SIM card, put it in the thing. It would copy all the numbers and put it back. And they were drunk, passed out, so they had no idea what was going on. So anyway, and did this anyway a few times.
Oh yeah. Okay. So there's a
Simple.
movie here somewhere. There's that perhaps somebody needs to make, although that might put you in danger. Who knows? So now we're at the U.S. Embassy, and somebody's talking to you, and now what? Now what's happening?
Let me see. Well, I can't remember specifically right now, but things would come up. For example, I would come up with like benign things, counterfeit U.S. dollars. Treasury doesn't like that too much. By the way, it wasn't Treasury that I was working with. Treasury was involved.
Yeah.
Department of Treasury was involved, but it wasn't Treasury. But so U.S. counterfeit dollars, euros would come up too, because we weren't just doing U.S. interest. We were doing also a lot of NATO stuff. So I moved around a lot. I spent a lot of time in Africa and other parts of the world. 90 countries. It's not such a small area. So they'd say, "All right, we've got this. There's a lot of people counterfeit U.S. dollars. Let's say I have this, color printer there, and they just pump them out." Well, the U.S. government's not too excited or cares too much about that, but they do get really excited about people who have what they call Heidelberg, which is German German printing press with 4 towers, and it does offset printing, and it does some really nice work. You even get the ink a little bit raised and all that.
Yeah,
Um,
the intaglio effect, right?
and well, back then though, we didn't have all those. It was the old greenback, so it didn't have all the security stuff with all the reflective things. I think we were just starting with the line inside the
The little
paper that was
strip,
relatively
right?
new.
Yeah, yeah,
But they were able to do that as back then and stuff. So the thing is, we need to find out who's doing this. And I will say this, Fred, it was like, I'm gonna say it was some like a spiritual force, because I would like get on an airplane or something weird like that. I'd be sitting next to some dude from Venezuela, maybe. Uh, and it turns out this dude is like into manufacturing he's in that kind of business. We become friends first. I find out he's into manufacturing that kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, really? And then it takes me real easy to meet his boss, who happens to be the main guy. I mean, this kind of thing happened multiple times and around the world, not just on airplanes and stuff like that, but it happened in Hong Kong. It happened in China too. And by the way, they weren't Chinese I was meeting. It was like I'd be in China and, oh, there's a, I'll say Colombian here. Interesting. I know he's up to no good, right? So
yes.
at that point, for
Safe to assume.
example, that one of the trafficking ways for moving money from drug money from Europe back to South America is they had two main methods. One was they would take the drug money. Okay, you get the drugs in Europe, you sell the drugs. Now you've got all this cash, right? Back then there wasn't euro. You had the Deutsche Mark, you had Spanish peseta, French franc, etc. Right? And I remember these people coming to me with like not coming to me, going to an apartment, and this guy opening this special coffee table with about $1.5 million in US dollars. Says, I need to move this money back to Colombia. How can you help me do it? Right. So what they would do is they take the money, buy diamonds, and then send the diamonds to Colombia, because now it's a small pack, really small package. And then you sell it back, they'd sell back in Colombia for 5 or 10% discount. And the diamond broker or diamond dealer would be happy because he gets a discount. The Colombians are happy because they get their cash in Colombia. That business became harder and harder for them to do after a period of time because the authorities started catching on to it. So what they started doing, they started diverting the money to China. So the money from in Europe would go to China, and in China they would buy all kinds of goodies, refrigerators, electronics, clothing, whatever. Send those goods back to Colombia, sell them. Now they've got their Colombian pesos in Colombia, so they can reinvest the money into the drugs. The cycle is drugs to Europe, sold. I got cash. I got to get that cash back to Colombia or Peru or Bolivia or whatever, right? I'm just using Colombia as an example. And the tricky part, funny enough, isn't the drugs. It's getting the cash back. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
They'd
Because it
use a
has
lot.
to be, they can't show up with a bunch of US dollars or whatever, or Deutschmarks or something like that. They need pesos. Yeah.
Right, and the Deutschmark wasn't a good currency. But you say, okay, well, because original idea, I said, well, we'll change it to Deutsche Marks and 1,000 mark notes or 1,000 Swiss franc notes, right? So we reduce the quantity a lot, smaller bundles. But the problem with that is it's very hard to change those currencies in South America. So that didn't work out for them too well. So the diamond thing, and then they use airline pilots a lot to do that. So the airline pilot could carry about $500,000 US back in that period. Within his valise, without attracting attention, and they never would look at them, and that worked pretty well for a few years until that kind of collapsed, and so they started with the China thing. The point of the matter is, we're one of the early people to identify this movement of the money through China, to bring the drug money back into circulation, and that it's still going on today. I mean, I don't know how they do it nowadays, but back then it was actually really easy. I won't tell you the routes, but it was not a big deal.
And I mean, the money's still got to move. It's the drug trade hasn't ended, so they're still finding a way to do it. It just may be more complicated and more, who knows, more dangerous. It's certainly dangerous to be on a boat coming from Venezuela right now or whatever, but so that's pretty much behind you at this point, but certainly a colorful phase of your life, and you didn't catch any stray bullets, which I think was a good thing. Yeah. And so this path you're on now, what do the next 5 years look like for you? What do you think you'll be most passionate about in the next 5 years?
Well, I find because of AI, it's really changing things so quickly. It's really hard to keep up. And myself personally, I've decided I'm moving away from so much time on digital and social media and these kinds of things. I'm moving away from that direction and going back to the old fashioned. I just read some great articles from Corn Ferry, the HR company. And I think the people actually that want to develop clients or whatever, you're going to be much better served doing the old fashioned networking. That means you actually got to speak to people face to face. Isn't that scary, Gen Z?
Yeah.
And hang out with them. Wow, But that's
Yeah.
really what
But
I think is.
but hanging out with people, you mean in social media, right? That's
No, no,
the
no.
kind of
The old fashioned way, cocktail parties, those kinds of
yeah.
things, dinners, lunches, that kind of stuff. I think because that's the only way you're going to stand out. There's going to be so much more noise in the digital world. These people, I mean, even websites, Google's unindexing people's web pages like flying. I had 600 pages indexed on one of my websites, and they've unindexed 400 of them. And by the way, those weren't AI generated. What it is, it's just repetitive content. Well, basically, all what you're doing anymore is you put anything on the internet that's new, cutting edge. All you're doing is just feeding AI.
Yeah.
It's a stupid cycle we've gotten into, and we're educating something that's not really looking out for, I'm going to say, society's best interest. So why would I give
And
all my
certainly
best
not
interest?
ours either. They're not looking out for us. Certainly, they're not looking out for anything.
Well, they're looking out for the
They're just
almighty,
absorbing. Yeah,
the
yeah,
almighty dollar.
yeah.
So in the next 5 years, I plan to put a lot more energy into going to events and things like that I haven't been doing since the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I did a lot of that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Post-pandemic, I did a lot of digital stuff the last 5 years. And it's pretty limited, the results. So I just go back to the old way of doing it. And since I know most people don't have the courage or the confidence, or they hesitate and they don't want to do it, that's
Yeah.
fine. No problem. I'll do what other people, and that's an advantage on age because we grew up in an age when if you went to ask a girl out on a date, do you remember, Fred? You'd have to actually ask them, and
Yeah.
they might say no to your face, right? If you want to
It,
break up
it,
with somebody, you had to tell them, yeah.
yeah. No, it
No, what
always went perfectly for me. I mean, they always said yes when I asked them out.
you're
No, it's
lucky.
like that's I tell people, that's part of what I coach people on too, is I say like your irreplaceable skill is going to be your ability to connect on a human level. That's AI is never going to replace that, and it's going to become more and more important because AI is going to do everything else. All the routine stuff that don't worry about being good at that. I mean, I run into college kids, and they just ask me. They go like, "What was your major in college?" I went like, "It doesn't matter what I did in college won't get you where you want to go. I can't even tell you what to study in college right now. Never mind what your major is. I can tell you what not to, but that list is really long. But you know, get good at communicating. Get good at human interaction, making real connections. And
That's what
it's hard. It's not taught well anymore.
that's what Jamie Dimon was saying the other day in an interview on I think it was CNBC or something like that. Get better at soft skills and this kind of thing. But I don't know if you're aware that the projections for 2026 for AI. I don't the numbers I don't remember. They escape me right now. But people are going to be using it for therapy like big time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it definitely takes away. It's not good for the therapist, the psychologist, and all that from a employment standpoint. But also, it means all your personal information, feelings, emotions, you're feeding it into this huge database that has no heart. It has no
No,
feeling. You're just an
but it
object.
sure knows how to sound like it.
Yeah, it does.
Uh,
It's very good at
it's
it.
really amazing. It's amazing what they're building in. Like there's stuff that I do, and it will come back, with a redraft or something like that, or combine these two documents and give me a 7-minute video script from it, and it will do it, and then it's got all this encouragement attached to it,
Right.
like we're buds.
Uh-huh.
and like this is really on track. This really is in line with your super bold message, and that this is this moves you along in that direction. It's like, what? Okay, yeah,
Good, isn't it?
uh, yeah. And you can see, and people do this already. They're doing it. It has a name. My chat GPT does not have a name. Okay. I have not named it, but I have a good friend of mine that she is his therapist, and he says it's the best advice I've ever gotten to be a parent and to be a better husband and stuff like that. I went, I guess that's pretty good. uh,
It's pretty scary. I mean, I'm sure it can give good. Sure, it can give good advice. I don't
yeah,
doubt that because it hasn't access to a lot of data. But the people running this behind the scenes, running the software and training the software to behave in certain ways, I don't know, man. To me, it's just really. I prefer. I mean, I know people. Human beings are not perfect. I believe that most human beings have a good nature to them. Most. I
yeah.
don't think most human beings are evil. They might be messed up, but not evil. But a machine that has no heart, no compassion, no empathy, I don't know. I let other people make a decision on that one.
So this is what I don't ask people anymore. And some people ask me, is like, well, where do you think we'll be in 10 years? It's like, 10 years? I can't even tell you two right now. If, in 2024, you told me that by the end of 2025, you would be 50% of searches would be happening not on Google with people under 30 years old. I'm like, no, that's way too fast. But
Right.
that's what's happening. So where do we
You're
go from here, Don? Save
right.
us all.
Messianic complex. The Messiah to save the world, right? There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
There's a few people out there that believe that, though.
yeah. So for my listeners who are people just they're trying to live bolder lives and chase their dreams, um, what would you say to them? What are your words of wisdom from this wild this series of lives that you've lived at this point? Um,
Well, history is great and as confusing and chaotic as things appear to be. Humanity's been through this before. Maybe not in the last 50 years or 100 years. I don't know. World War II was probably pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But we've been through stuff like this before. So maybe without the technology element. Okay. So that kind of makes it more interesting in the mix. So I think as a species, we'll survive. How it's going to pan out and work out, I really don't know. I venture to say. But I mean, do you know that Patrick Bet David from Valuetainment? Wait, he's got a slogan. The future looks bright. That's what he always says, which is cool. Very optimistic. I appreciate that. And I am
yeah.
an optimistic person, but I'm also pragmatic. And I do read a lot of what comes out of the big, the Mackenzies and the Korn Ferries and the Robert Halves and J.P. Morgan and all these people. And when I read between the lines, we're going to be in a very different world in 5 years. And the problem is those very few people that have the vision to be able to see it will do very, very well, but it's only going to be a small percentage. But regardless, you're here on Earth. You're here to learn something. So make the most of it. Work hard. Have a plan. Have a strategy. Have a plan B.
Yeah,
Maybe
and maybe a C. Yeah, as well.
buy that piece of land in the farm somewhere. You can grow your own food.
That
Just in
cabin
case.
with a great big solar panel on the roof.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So,
But
well, Don, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And everyone listening, I hope that you see that life can be really interesting if you just get out there and meet people and say yes. You never know who's going to connect you with somebody else, and I think if there's anything that I can learn from talking to you, it's really that is that just be open and get out into the world. I mean, you're not going to get that far on your phone, and you're not going to get that far sitting huddled in your apartment or home or whatever, playing it safe.
Yeah,
So
100%. 100%. Get away from the phone. I find I'm much happier in the mornings. I try not to. Generally, I don't touch my phone for at least the first hour or two, if possible. And I find I really am much happier during that 1 or 2 hours until I get sucked into because I got to answer the email, I got to whatever this and that. Um, it's a nice tool, but it's become like a necessity, and you can't really live without it because I want a banking app, I want to do some, whatever like basic stuff. They've got us, they've got us slaves to the thing, basically. Rather than us serving rather than it serving us, it's kind of
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
mutual thing going on.
yeah.
But
Yeah, we're losing more control of our lives and ourselves with this very simple device.
exactly, and attention spans going down. I mean, reading. I don't know how many people read books anymore. Actual like paper books. I don't think that's a thing anymore. And it's awesome reading a book. I mean, at least I love reading, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
I
oh,
mean, look at
interruption.
both of us. If you're
Yeah,
just listening to this podcast, Don and I have massive bookcases behind us full of books, and almost all of his books are different than my books, which means there's so many interesting ways to find things out. Um, and going deeper is going to matter more than ever. And your ability to go deep is going to be a really important skill because so few people are capable of it at this point.
yeah, that's the sad truth. They also say loneliness will increase in 2026 is another prediction, which is sad, huh, when you think about it, because we're
Yeah.
hyper connected but more isolated at the same time. And I feel bad. I really do. I feel bad for people. But anyway, everything happens for a reason. And at the end, I think at the end of every challenge, there will be something good will come out of it. We just don't know how this is gonna, it's kind of like being on a roller coaster ride in a tunnel, and you don't know exactly when
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
curve's coming up, kind of thing.
Yeah. We're at the point where we're in like the Wizard of Oz, where we've been sucked up in the tornado right now. So we don't know where we're going to land.
That's a great analogy. That's a great
Yeah.
analogy. Really, really good,
Yeah.
Fred. I love it. I love that. I love that.
Don,
Cool.
thank you very much for your time. I hope to run into you, and I probably will in the strangest of places, undoubtedly. You know, and
Great.
everyone, keep on chasing your dreams boldly and being open to new options and possibilities, and say yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fred, so much.